Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. I hope you enjoy. A new game written by Storm the Castle. Amon Durst, the communications officer. Sayliff Kist, who has surprisingly few interactions with the humans that other humans refer to affectionately as their resident nerd. But what she had seen was confusing. While not physically imposing like many of the other crew, honestly resembling their females more than what she knew their males looked like. He was nonetheless well regarded and commanded a certain amount of respect, even from a captain who commanded the highest respect of the warrior-turned-worker Sayliff, or Kissy, as her co-workers had started calling her. On top of that, he was a standoffish, frequently ducking others in order to do whatever it was he did. But when problems came up with the function of the ship, he was often the first called as opposed to the engineering where she worked. Moreover, he often ended up being the only one called, as he frequently resolved the issues, whatever they were. More confusing still, he was stronger than her, stronger than the clan HFY. Her people were one of the only that outsized humans in height and bulk, and while she wasn't the strongest of her species, she still boasted a warrior's prowess. However, one day she'd entered a physical improvement room on the ship earlier than usual, only to come across Amon as he lifted the impossible metal plates, as many on the ship did for exercise and recreation. He'd taken one look at her, wrapped and bolted, as though in fear, which she should have understood if, following his departure, she had found herself unable to replicate the feat. Even with only 3 of the 4 arms she'd been born with still present, the fact that the tiny man had managed to trounce her in matters of strength drove her, as the captain would say, up the wall. However, she would now get a resolution to her confusion. Sayliff had been driven from her home world for 2 reasons. 1, she'd been mutilated in battle but failed to die. By the captain, ironically, and so had no place amongst her people as a free citizen. 2nd, there had been born a mutant, the soft protrusions on her thoracic region, which took the place of otherwise hard and durable carapace that covered the rest of her, resembled the memories of human females. And since the clan HFY had no tradition to cover up their chests, since they weren't supposed to have anything worth covering up, Sayliff often found herself being stared at by human males, their face red, as they tried to reconcile her fairly human appearance with the fact that she didn't actually have the so-called memories. Amon, in particular, was susceptible to this quirk of her physiology, which she was now using to her advantage to more or less pin him in place. 2 of her hands on the wall on either side of his head, and her remaining one on her hip, forcing him to look at either of her chest, which he found fascinating, apparently, or her face, the 2 of which he had switching between regularly. Wow, you are something. I mean, what's going on, Kissy? He asked. Satisfied her mutations were finally doing something helpful for a change, Sayliff answered him. Human Amon, I joined this crew because your captain defeated and mutilated me in the war between our species. It was the only place one of my sort could theoretically have come to, though, admittedly, I have expected to be a slave. Amon nodded his recognition, recalling the spectacle she made of herself when she first showed up. However, much to my consternation, I have come to the conclusion that you are regarded by the humans of the ship in much the same way as I regard the captain, in spite of the dramatic difference between you. I want to know why. Are you a warrior? Is your mind and physique some sort of deception? Why is it that you seem to command so much respect amongst your peers, in spite of the fact that you seem to be outclassed by them in every way? Oh, is that all? He asked, seeming surprised. Actually, he stopped mid-sentence, and she could tell that he'd fallen into thought. Amon's eyes narrowed, and he bared his teeth at her, which she had come to learn was a smile, though its meaning could be just as malicious as it could be positive. This one felt malicious. Actually, what do you do for recreation, Kissy? He asked. Off-put by the dramatic shift in topic, she nonetheless answered, though with a suspicious air to her. even putting away in case he intended to attack.
Nothing really. The clan Ifa do not commonly practice recreation, preferring to make full use of the time we are given in service to our masters or people.
Sayliff had found the stretches of time during which she had no assigned tasks maddening at first, but she had recently come to appreciate the peace, and had taken up meditation, as the clan Ifa consular, a wise man, would, and had found it rewarding practice.
For what do you ask?
I've got a trade to offer for you. That's why. Sayliff was in a room with Ammon and fairly recently recruited operator Thruss, the chief of security Mr. Neeson, and a young human male she didn't know, but had introduced themselves as Alan. In front of them was a computer screen preloaded with a series of information from a game that she had been asked to participate in. The trade Ammon had offered was as follows. He would tell her anything she wanted to know about himself and even the crew members, within the bounds of personal space, of course, and in exchange she would participate in their game as their missing fourth player. The other three had apparently been playing with Ammon for almost 6 months, only for that tale to end and a new tale to require a fourth. Games in human society last months on end.
Even their pastimes are incredible. No wonder we lost. Human Ammon, this game you call Jail and Lizards.
Dungeons and Dragons, he corrected. Her translator was still saying the same thing, so she just mimicked him.
Dungeons and Dragons. You say the purpose is to pretend to be a member of another species and act out the story, as though we were this person, and it is unscripted?
Correct. It's difficult to explain the draw. You either get it or you don't, and the only way to find out is to play. We can't play effectively without a fourth player, not until level 5 at least. So if you can come to our sessions, I'll tell you 3 things you want to know about anyone you want, myself included, so long as it isn't a violation of HIPAA.
I see.
She didn't, actually.
And this story, this scary chair.
Eldritch Throne, he corrected.
Right. It is a story you wrote yourself and want us to play through.
Right. This won't make a lot of sense, but it's a combo of Lovecraft and high fantasy. I'll walk you through during the character creation. Sayliff was apprehensive about the game and its concept, that not at least of which was due to the fact that her people weren't known for having vivid imaginations, and another being that she didn't understand half of what was being said. However, her curiosity outweighed her trepidations, and so she tentatively agreed.
Very well, but I will abide no snickering should I experience issues, and I demand you explain the list of races. Many seem human-based, and yet humans are apparently the last of them. What is this?
Oh, those are just... A small human male attempted to answer, only for Mr. Neeson to cover his mouth. Extinct species, he answered, and the reaction from the 2 non-humans of the group was dramatic. Extinct? Asked Thruss. Chitin. What do you mean? The powers listed for them are to possess their lifespans. How could such races be anything but dominant? A question Sayliff wanted answered herself. The descriptions of some of the more human-like races, like elves and dwarves, were understandable, with longer lifespans or higher physical strengths, but the command of the others had primordial forces called magic, had their reading. In particular, the race called Tiefling, which resembled an elf Psy of the greater elf empire, had her worried, and she resolved to investigate the elf Psy in private to find out if they had powers and were in fact formerly fellow Deathworlders alongside humanity. That's 'cause humanity had 2 things none of them could compete with. Numbers and progress, declared the thickly built man. His hand still slapped to cover what was perhaps his young spawn's face. But we outdeveloped them faster than we could compensate for, and those that didn't join the hereditary line of humanity were wiped out. Ammon, a pained look on his face, with a clenched fist illustrating her sorrow over the truth of humanity, said, A tragedy of our sordid past. Just imagine what we could have accomplished alongside the Dragonlings or the Nephilim had we but settled our differences peacefully. Mr. Neeson nodded solemnly, and both Thruss and Sayliff could feel the tragic sorrow of the falling of their ancestors expressed here, and both joining the humans in a moment of silence for their loss. It wouldn't be the first time a sapient species had competed for dominance on its own world with another, resulting in the losing side being removed from history. But for this many races to have been lost, truly, humanity's ruthlessness was a terror to behold. Just as the compassion could be equally shocking. Now then, before that, Ammon suddenly seemed to want to change the subject. What 3 questions do you have for me today? He asked. And she immediately answered with the 3 that had been burning her the longest.
Yes. First, why are you regarded so highly on a crew that seems to value physicality? Second, how is it that you are so strong in spite of your physique? Finally, why does the captain defer to you so often, even when the issue is apparently an engineering issue?
All right, easy questions, easy answers, he said, and stretched his neck. First, the captain and I were in the Marines together. I was actually his superior officer. Then he had the rest of the crew put a lot of stock in my logistical and tactical insight. It saved more than a few of their lives in the past, including against you. I grew disillusioned with command and let him run the boat, but he still asked me for advice a lot. Second, I am a competitive bodybuilder. Humans consider physical strength to be a matter of competition in sport, but unlike bulkier competitors, I am not an eternal cut. My muscles are 3 times denser than a normal person. So the only crewmate who can outlift me is the captain, who is a professional strongman. A similar competition with different goals and practices. Finally, on top of what I told you earlier, the ship is fairly new age, and everyone knows that running it is a matter of software management more than anything, which I am specialized in. I can fix most of the ships remotely through bypassing a theoretical routing change. Slightly dazed by the sudden knowledge that the small human she'd all but written off was actually one of the strongest, most dangerous men on the vessel, say Liv, was quiet for the rest of the session, which was a planning phase for everyone's character. She chose an orcish wizard. What the hell do you mean my fireballs haven't recovered? We just long rested, demanded a furious 3-armed clan Ifa of a tiny, steel-muscled DM. Cthulhu's eyes on you, he shot back, just as hotly. You can't get long rest. You can't rest at all when an outer god who controls the dream realm is fucking glaring at you.
Why is he looking at us?
We have the protection of Hasta, don't we? You sold the golden statue. It was an effigy of the Yellow King, an effigy of Hasta. He doesn't have your back anymore.
No one does.
Captain Darius sighed as he watched the recording, sent to him in an email titled, "Another one has joined the coven," from his buddy in engineering. Colonel Durst had apparently converted another one. First the bug, then the blue giant. God, it's like he wants to spread it to the whole damned galaxy. He frowned deeply. She'd sent him a box of hand-rolled cigars, ones she'd made herself, which happened to be his absolute favorite thing. How in the hell had she known about that? End of story. I would quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and Patreons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, Lord Azrakal, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Dragzoon WRE, Holly's Sister, Arcadian. Thank you very much.